Well, good afternoon. A very important challenge after lunch to speak about supervisory-based supervision. This generates a lot of expectation. To what extent can we be attentive after lunch? So I would like to thank Fasecolda once again. We had to make some changes in our agenda. I hope that I haven't caused any trauma in the development of your meeting. From the Financial Superintendency, there is something I would like to share with all of you and through our followers in the media. Let's try to answer a question. Are we able and to what extent to innovate from supervision in what has to do with the insurance industry and the convergence of a new technology modality with the insurance industry, which has been called Insurtech, but I think it goes beyond that concept. So basically, my presentation is to share with you the experience that the Financial Superintendency has had to understand innovation, to understand the strategy of the industry, and to have the ability to forecast whether that industry is able to face up to the current challenges. We have the people, we have the ideas, we have the possibility to think outside the box. This is becoming very frequent in organizations. And this is an idea that should be welcomed by any supervisor who is able to anticipate to the transformation of the industry, because that's what we are experiencing. We are experiencing very large and material transformations from all vantage points. The supervisor cannot be lagging behind. The supervisor cannot simply say, I don't like it, I don't want to change, I am not able, I don't have the skills, or maybe that's not the model I would like to follow. I believe that a risk-based supervision model, such as the one established in Colombia, requires not only anticipation, but also to follow the industry in this process of risk management, opening up the space to learn about the industry and to be able to follow adequate management. So I was asked to tell you about this process of innovation, and this is how we have called it. I believe that the first important point to consider is it necessary to innovate or not in any industry? This is a very clear answer. There is no doubt that if we are not, we will this will be the survival of the fittest, those that can adapt. And the financial industry has been covered by some parameters that could be different. But today, innovation is an absolute need. If we don't innovate, I've always said that the supervisor will always be present. There is no doubt about it. But on which industry will the supervisor practice? So this is a great opportunity. That's why the supervisor is thinking about moving into a strategy that follows up the industry, because there lies the opportunity, not just thinking about public interest, but also the opportunity for the country. I have said several times that if our work as supervisors, as superintendents, does not change and transform the life of the people in our country, we are not doing a good job. That is being a public servant. That is being passionate for what we do. And We have to identify important opportunities to make headway in innovation. But innovation is not just to change the status quo. It's not just to allocate resources and simply think, I innovate in as much as I have the buzzword, the buzz structure. We have to have a comprehensive approach, and that's why the supervisor has to think about innovating strategies, but also in the way in which we will be able to transform, to undergo digital transformation, which is taking place in every sector. This chart illustrates that not just for Colombia, but for the world, there is a need to make progress and mature in this digital transformation. Insurance are here in a very interesting position where, despite the fact that they were not the first to start the transformation process, they had the possibility to make a headway faster. And that's a competitive advantage we have nowadays when we speak about fintech, insurtech, and all of those. The speed of change is fundamental in what we are doing. These maturity processes require institutional support, of course. They need a certain framework for development because we continue to be very intensive in our rules, in our regulations, in the way we can define the rules of the game so that the various stakeholders in the industry can make headway along that transformation. The banking sector has been very successful. We have apps, developments, new products, but we are surprised to see that the insurance industry has been able to very fast adapt that technology, even faster than the banking sector, which traditionally shouldn't be the case. In a country like Colombia, there are some interesting reflections about this transformation. So what does the digital revolution and digital evolution, however you want to call it, shows us in Colombia? There is a combination of many factors. The Superintendency has a survey about opportunities and challenges in the area of innovation in the financial sector. And they're interesting results. We are clear that this is an opportunity. We know that in the world there is technology available, processes and strategies. But the question for Colombia is, how are we thinking about this digital transformation process? 73% of the people think that digital transformation is developing. The big question is, what's the meaning of developing? To what extent can we compare in an industry development? Is it just the initial stages when I am just thinking about working in that area? I have an approach. We have a regulatory sandbox. Can I test it? Or am I just exploring alternatives? So there is a need to say, well, results are important. If we don't have the pool, if we are not able to develop minimum viable products and significant progress in efficiency, just to think about that my digital transformation is developing is not enough, and that requires improvement and a better understanding. The big question, and this is accompanied by investing resources, spending resources, allocating resources, and financial resources are always very scarce, and our budget is very limited. In our organization, and some of the people I have talked to share the idea that talking about budget for innovation and investment in technology can be as broad as you want or as limiting as you want. So our invitation is to be ambitious and to think that the strategy of the industry necessarily requires innovation and innovative elements. Innovation of our processes, innovation in our thinking about how to please the financial consumer, how to meet the needs of the financial consumer. We are always told the consumer is right. The difference is that the consumer is empowered and has the ability to choose to move freely between one product or another. And in some occasions, even for a supervisor that is open to digital transformation, there is always a question in his mind of whether it is within the controlled area or the uncontrolled area. So there are big paradigms we have to go over. In the area of insurance, insurance is based on the need to be able to calculate in the best possible way a special behavior of an agent, of an insured person, and there are some technologies available for that. Artificial intelligence, for instance, is the innovative factor which we use more often. The big question is we don't buy artificial intelligence. AI is not manufactured. First, we need to process and have very good background information. Where is that information? How robust are we in big data? If we think about artificial intelligence and if we don't have the tools with an information basis that generates significant input, it is impossible to plan to develop artificial intelligence in 5 years. So that raises a lot of questions about the development of the innovation process. This is a distribution by general insurance and people insurance. Inclusive insurance in this report of financial inclusion have experienced changes in the way we are adopting to this process. Is it true that digital transformation is enough through mobile devices and electronic media to buy policies? Maybe yes or maybe no. The big challenge to Insurtech is that it forces the company to work simultaneously and in a coordinated fashion if it wants to transform. I am transforming my company as insurance companies are being transformed in order to give a good experience to the financial consumer. The electronic and digital media, well, we have to welcome them. We have to welcome digital transformation, electronic media. But I think that what we have to think is, am I really generating a product that meets the needs of my consumers? My consumers, are they interested in approaching me as a company because I generate value? Some of them will, some of them won't. What is happening with the experience of the financial consumer? This is a very interesting question. This is something we have read several times. Let me go over these very quickly. The factors with which you can work on a policy of digital transformation and innovation. We as the Financial Superintendency are willing and capable of facing any of these factors. We have had some initiatives, undertakings, and we want to open the door to continue thinking outside the box. There are regulatory restrictions, of course, but I invite you to be disruptive and avoid those limitations in as much as we can understand the risk and how to better manage. There is a regulatory environment which has to be there, but the sandbox, well, last week in the National Development Plan, an article was included because everybody was saying, well, the sandbox, the supervisor sandbox is not necessarily the same as that in that country or that other country. Yes, we are able to do it, but you want certainty, so let's include an article. Article 169 or 172, I don't remember exactly, of our National Development Plan has a regulatory sandbox, as the United Kingdom and other countries. So through a special license for 2 years, you should be able to test any of these elements. And I take advantage of this opportunity to tell you that we already have one insurance company approved by our innovation committee to make headway with a very, very interesting product, which is no longer structured by branches, but rather by coverage. And we will have a lot of good news about that in the next few days. And this is part of our effort to help the industry to be transformational and to change our approaches. Clearly, It is not just a question of aligning the supervisor. It is not a question of having the board of directors make a decision and investors support some business transformation. There is a need, and we have to simultaneously analyze that need if we really want to do a responsible and sustainable transformation process. It's not just testing for the taste of testing, and if we make a mistake, we apologize and move forward. We must always think in the sustainability and the ability to be prudent. The big question, which is consistent with this study by Pricewaterhouse, is what is needed for this process? Human talent, of course, human resources. We have important deficits in that area, not just the technicians in the industry, but also the people knowledgeable in these new technologies and methodologies with which we develop projects, how the X or Y methodology is implemented, high definition, etc. All of these elements require training. And that's why the superintendency now asks, with what people are you going to do this? Who are going to be your guests? Are you going to import people? Are you going to contract with a university, a training program? What do you want to do to prepare the talent you need? A new asset in our economy is data. Data is an essential input for our industry, and we are not necessarily talking about, well, today we have a lot of discussions not just about the ownership of information, but try to vindicate that the owner of the information has to decide where, how, and when are they able, under any circumstance, to authorize or deny the use of a product or a service. We have cybersecurity, we have the need to implement differentiated standards, and digital authentication, how to face fraud, how to make processes easier, and a regulation that can embrace all of those business processes. But it is not the superintendency assuming that the business is Y or X, but causality lies on a conversation that is developed by the state and supervised entities to make sure that the innovation process develops properly. Some additional comments, and it is almost time for my key speaker to participate. This is our ability to choose what do we want to do and what will be the intensity of the transformation process. My organization is able to accept this challenge. I want to change the paradigm, or do I simply want to stay on the surface transforming a product? None of them is better than the other. That depends on many factors, including the environment and the needs of our country. But here we have some alternatives, and the financial superintendency is willing to understand whether we can change our frame of mind and think about a very different ecosystem. Are we able to understand not just the risk management, but to transform and change life of people? So I urge you to think bigger. If we want a great country, we need a great insurance company. Otherwise, we will be limited to an environment in which we won't be able to meet our expectations. Our character is we do believe in Insurtech. We support Insurtech. We fully agree. And our main character is the goldfish. I was told this morning about how important the goldfish is for coaching, for strategies, for disruption, simply because, and this is an anecdotic data, if we think in a presentation like this gives us an idea of the dimension we want to develop. This fish is able to grow every day until it dies. It will grow every day. When does it stop growing? When it doesn't have an adequate environment to grow. All the other animal species, including human beings, we grow to a certain level, and sometimes we start we stop growing and we start shrinking. But this is how we see Insurtech, with the ability to provide these goldfish with the ability, the tools, the context in order to be able to grow indefinitely. And this is our message, which is worthwhile moving forward. So you have seen these every morning. Gabriela from the IDB explains this very clearly, but we believe in this. As a supervisor, my only message is, are we able to develop initiatives and ideas which are able to make headway? It is preferable to make progress and not to be stagnant because of fear about the superintendency. There are some interesting elements here where, of course, it would be relevant to establish where I want to move more or less. But I believe that this industry has the ability to move forward because in its essence, all the right elements are present.
In this study by McKinsey in 2017, one of the most difficult things was asking him, okay, tell me how many of these technologies and concepts have been developed for the industry. Machine learning and big data is where we should start, because that way we'll be able to know what kind of data we're using and which not. And then insurance is on demand. That information, we really don't know many times what it means. We know what the output is that it produces, and yet it shows, here we have a ranking which shows that these technologies are already incorporated. By demand, insurance by demand, many times we're seeing these bills, these initiatives in Congress, and it has an almost automatic protection, and somehow it has that understanding. Internet of Things and many of the things that we have here, we need another environment. We need 5G to be another reality in the country. We need an IT law in the country that will allow us to think like this. That is why we created the fourth center of revolution or innovation that the OECD has, and the idea was that blockchain and the Internet of Things should be the technologies that are going to be analyzed there. So we are in an environment that is more integrated and more and broader. And basically, we're just beginning, truly. Now, we sort of decided to benchmark it against each other, and relevant data is, okay, how many startups are we having? And sometimes it's a good idea, it gives us a good idea of the dynamism of this business, but I really don't know if we can measure beyond the number of startups that are deliverable with these data. Colombia has 200 more or less measured companies in this environment. Maybe the association can give us a more exact data. 10 of them devoted to the insurance industry in Colombia. But what happens when we look abroad? What happens if we grow this number, looking at the experience of Brazil, of the United Kingdom? Here there are other startups, because somehow they have no boundaries. And I think that there's a very important space there, because we have to think that the supervised and the non-supervised industries both have a lot of ways to grow here. And our golden opportunity, as we have said, have been growing this line of work. Digital authentication, 22 fields are the ones that are needed to admit a person in a form for insurance. 10 years ago, 22 fields were the simplest way of admitting someone. Today, neither the paper, neither the 22 fields. The need to advance in a truly digital world is absolutely undeniable. I remember that I saw something, a warning the other day. Upon the order of the banking superintendency, you must complete this information. And you review the anti-money laundering regulations, you review the SAR-left, you review everything, and you see that that really wasn't necessary. The only way to validate is a simple copy or or expanded at 150% of your citizens card, your simple ID, but a digital validation can be very useful, and we can develop many more things. Technological innovation to do away with barriers, that is a more in-depth discussion, but we really need to do that in order to penetrate that 2.8%. The road, the path is not the insurance, not the written insurance, the compulsory insurance or mandatory insurance. It's as if that golden fish every day had a smaller aquarium and a smaller fishbowl. That's not the way to think about it. It shouldn't be mandatory. The insurance should always be positive in the life of whoever acquires it. And basically the potential of disruption in the field and innovation for all industries. Playing a little bit, trying to think different, like that golden fish. The discussion we have today, 2 years ago, we had it 2 years ago, and it was a superintendent talking about trying, making mistakes, getting up, learning from our mistakes. And it was somehow a message that my colleagues used to say, Castaño, be careful with that. That message is not good. What are you saying? And I have analyzed that. I have studied it, and I really think that's the path. We have to innovate. Now, in order to innovate, we have to open up a world of communication, which is very different from what we've done so far. The old model is the one of the policeman who stops a car and he says, let me see your extinguishing kit, your fire extinguisher. Oh my God, I hope that it's up to date. Let me see, that model is no good anymore from the standpoint of the risk-based supervision. Today, it is you you administer your business and let me supervise and let me see if you're doing it right. But that's it. But I give you freedom to supervise your business. I let the manager know if they have the technology and the processes. I think that it was a year and a half, April of last year, we launched it, and it's got interesting figures and it works. The first thing is that we began like Noah, and to give us the room to do away with our mindset, which is too rigid. I love my superintendents. I love my job, and every time when I was a superintendent, and even when I wasn't, it was very difficult because to hear people say, "Oh, it's very difficult because the superintendents will not let us," but at home, I was taught that you can do it, that there is nothing impossible, in fact. And so I decided to do away with the scope, with the scheme, and of course we compared international experiences and everything. And the idea was to also move and become innovators. Today we have a second derivative. Our second derivative, it wasn't for just trying things. Today we want to be benchmarks. Today we want to be reference points, and we want to lead public innovation processes. This model was developed by the superintendents, by the SFC, and the rest of the SFCs of the country want to replicate it, and we are leading this process with other supervisors in the region because we also understood that it's no good to run fast and get there first if the last one does not get there on time. It's no good for the region if not all the supervisors understand and see everything at the same time. So this is a space, in the first place, open supervised, not supervised, whatever, but it's an open space. Today we receive meetings of all kinds of natures. You don't imagine all the ideas that get to these superintendents today, very different from what used to get there before. Benefits, many. We have learned. We thought that we were the ones that were going to serve the financial community, etc. The ones that have most benefited are us. We've learned, we've understood, we've transformed, we've governed. And in each one of those elements, that room has been highly collaborative. This process in which we were saying, oh, let's go, let's move, let's understand it better, because otherwise we're going to lag behind. The financial superintendents has gotten 110 innovators. Of those innovators have been related directly with the industry, with the insurance industry. There may be others that it may have a cross-cutting application, like, for example, know your client, alternative data to estimate capabilities, whatever. And of those approaches, we've had 15 requests to test, which we are already trying, which we have already been requested to test those opportunities. And basically today we have 5 approved pilots, and one of them corresponds to the insurance industry. Now these figures are their purpose is nothing more than to urge you, to encourage you to participate in this process. That it not be you, the ones who suffered what was going on at the superintendents 2 or 3 years ago. Oh my God, if I don't get on this bus, what is going to happen later on when the bus just takes off and I'm not on it? So the sandbox is something that leads us to reflect every day, to think every day. Every case, every opportunity is different. We have learned significantly, and it's basically 2 or 3 areas. What can we take to the sandbox? Anything supervised, not supervised, that allows me as a supervisor to understand what the innovation is and what are the barriers that limit it, and let us try it with a verified, with a proven environment. We don't need a perfect product here. A minimum a valid product is enough. It may work, it may not work, and nobody is going to accuse you, nor nobody is going to put you in jail, because that's not the way it works. This is a controlled environment where we what to do is understand very well how that business can be scaled, and how it is capable of making us progress in the field of financial inclusion. And I think that here we have a better disaggregation, a better detail of that sandbox. That sandbox was not in a law, and we've never needed to have it in a sandbox because it is a highly replicable model. And we are going to have sandboxes jointly with other authorities. For example, the Superintendency of Industry and Trade. And we have evaluated and are making the decision of having a joint sandbox, not just from the standpoint of authorities or capabilities, authoritative capabilities or supervision capabilities. No, the idea is to have those superintendencies working online so that this sandbox can have a more integrated vision, a more powerful vision, so that we can move together. Interesting things are on their way. I think that you have heard about the crowdfunding, the securities market, the savings products. For each industry, there are examples that allow us to see that this is no common discourse, that it's not crazy Castaño trying to believe a story, but he is very present, especially with the institutional capability of the asset that we have as a country and as an industry. Of course, there are challenges. There's interesting challenges there for us about how to change and motivate the changes in paradigm. Clearly, the regulation is going to continue there. The sandbox will continue to exist. It will not generate a deregulation because that is not a good message. Some people ask us, "Oh, you have a sandbox there. That's not serious." And I say, "Yes, it is serious. It's the standards. It's a public policy decision that is different. It's innovating. It's just simply different." But it's not crazy. And we have realized that innovation can coexist with supervision, with ordinary and traditional supervision. It's difficult. And we've had things like, for example, this isn't an anecdote. Oh, super, you have a wonderful discourse. But yesterday I had a visit and one of your inspectors said, "Hey, I know I know it's neat that your super thinks this, but but I need you to show me this and that." We have to be patient. That can happen. Yes, that can happen, and we need to be in our own supervisor's sandbox because we as supervisors need our own supervisor. But the great idea is that this can in fact survive. There is no conflict of interest between what you do and what we do. You work for a legitimate and valid business that seeks to meet the needs of a financial consumer, and that is what this superintendency wants to do. If you do well, we do well too. So there is no conflict there that automatically almost excludes. You cannot say, "Oh no, innovation cannot coexist with supervision." Well, yes, it can. Yes, it can. And the people from the superintendency will be able to demonstrate that it is possible. And we eliminated a principle that everybody had told us always. They used to tell us, "Oh, you, so the people from the superintendency, you." It's always a suspicion-based supervision. No, we have learned that we have to trust our clients. Our clients are the clients are the users of the financial system, but also the regulated agencies, the regulated financial institutions. Obviously, we need some kind of a deterrence power in order to make our decisions, but it is not our purpose to use it every day because that is not it's not being prudential. It's just being lazy and not being capable of measuring the risk and understanding how there are alternative mechanisms. Prudentiality is not, you're not prudential where you're just simply scared. No, we need to go hand in hand with you and eliminating so much regulation. These are the messages that are key for us. Let us be this goldfish. Let us be capable of ensuring a big insurance business so that we can all progress at the same pace. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.